It was supposed to be a simple birthday dinner. I had just turned 72, and my daughter Laura insisted on hosting the party at her house in Pittsburgh. The table was glowing with candles, the smell of roast chicken filled the air, and the chatter of neighbors and relatives warmed the room. For a brief moment, I thought, maybe, just maybe, this would be a night of peace. When the cake arrived, everyone began to sing. I stood up, holding my glass of sparkling cider, ready to thank them. My hands trembled slightly, not from age, but from emotion. "Thank you all for being here," I began, smiling. "Family is the greatest gift of all, and Laura cut me off. Her voice was sharp, slicing through the warmth like a cold knife. "Family? Mom, please, everyone knows you're just a burden now. You should stop pretending you're the reason we're gathered. If it weren't for us, you'd be sitting alone in that tiny apartment of yours." The room froze. Forks stopped clinking. The laughter died in throats. Even the candles seemed to flicker lower. I looked at my daughter, my own flesh and blood, and for a second I felt the floor give way beneath me. Guests avoided my eyes. A few coughed awkwardly. My grandson Ethan stared at his plate, his cheeks burning with shame on my behalf. I forced a small smile, hiding the crack in my heart. "Well," I said softly, "if being a burden means still baking you birthday cakes for 30 years, then I suppose I'll accept the title." But inside, I knew something had broken. That was the night my birthday turned into the night I decided to take my dignity back. That night, when the guests had left and Laura barely muttered a half-hearted goodbye, I drove back to my apartment alone. The silence in the car was louder than any insult. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked older, lonelier, and somehow smaller. I sat on the edge of my bed, still in my birthday dress, staring at the untouched slice of cake I'd brought home in a napkin. My own daughter had chosen my birthday, the day she should have honored me, to brand me a burden. The word rang in my ears. Burden. I thought back to the winters when I worked double shifts at the public library just to pay for Laura's braces. I remembered walking home in the snow, shoes soaked, clutching my paycheck like it was gold. I thought about the nights I stayed up sewing her prom dress by hand because we couldn't afford the one she wanted. And I remembered the tears in her eyes when she said, "You're the best mom in the world." When her husband lost his job years later, who covered the down payment so they wouldn't lose their home? Me. Who drained her retirement savings to make sure Ethan's first surgery was paid for? Me. And who cooked every Thanksgiving dinner for 4 decades straight until Laura decided last year that tradition was outdated. Now, the same daughter looked at me as nothing but an old woman taking up space. My chest ached with a mix of grief and betrayal. I wasn't just losing respect, I was losing my place in the very family I built. For the first time in my life, I felt truly disposable. But even through the tears, a tiny voice whispered inside me, "They've mistaken your kindness for weakness. Don't let this be the ending." That night, grief hollowed me out, but it also carved space for something new. The next morning, I woke with swollen eyes and a hollow chest. I thought maybe some tea would ease the ache, so I shuffled to my old wooden cabinet, the one I hadn't opened in years. Inside were boxes of photographs, yellowed letters, and dusty binders. I reached for a leather folder I hadn't touched since my husband passed away. My fingers trembled as I opened it, and there it was. A deed. The house Laura and her husband were living in, the very home she boasted about, still bore my name. My late husband and I had bought it in 1982, and though I let Laura take it over, we never transferred the title. I sat down hard, the paper shaking in my hands. For years, I had believed I'd already given away everything to my daughter. But the truth was, legally, that house was still mine. Digging deeper, I found an old notebook, the kind I used to balance the library budget with. Inside, in my neat handwriting, were lists of every major help I had given my children. $14,000 for Laura's college tuition, $7,500 for her wedding, $18,000 when her husband lost his job, $6,000 for Ethan's surgery, and countless smaller amounts all written in ink. I flipped page after page, my eyes blurring with tears. The total was staggering over $95,000. For years, Laura had treated my help as if it were a duty, not a sacrifice. But here, in black and white, was proof. I had never been a burden. I had been the backbone. I closed the folder slowly, a calm unlike any I had felt last night settling into my bones. Laura thought I was powerless. She thought age had turned me into someone disposable. But she had forgotten one thing. I still had the receipts. And suddenly, I no longer felt like a victim. The following week, I carried that leather folder in my tote bag like it was a lifeline. Instead of heading to the market, I walked into the small law office on Main Street where Mr. Harris, an old friend of my late husband, still practiced. His hair was whiter now, but his eyes were just as sharp. "Margaret, no, forgive me, Nora," he said warmly. "What brings you in?" I placed the folder on his desk. "I need to make changes, quiet ones." For 2 hours, we combed through everything, the deed, the notebook, my bank statements. He whistled low when he saw the total. "You've practically financed their lives, Nora, and they called you a burden." I nodded, my lips pressed tight. By the time I left that office, a plan was in motion. The deed to the house would remain in my name, but the transfer upon my passing would go directly to Ethan, my grandson, the one person who still looked at me with pure love. I also opened a trust fund with the savings and remaining retirement bonds. That money would ensure Ethan's education, untouched by his mother's hands. No announcement, no warning. I didn't breathe a word at Sunday service, not even to my closest friend. Every smile I gave Laura over the next few days was quiet armor, every polite nod a mask hiding the truth. The power she thought she owned was slipping silently through her fingers. Back in my apartment, I folded away the updated documents in a fireproof box and slid it under my bed. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. Laura had called me useless, but she had no idea that while she spoke, I was already building a future where she could no longer erase me. The following Sunday, Laura insisted we have dinner together. I arrived early, carrying a tin of oatmeal cookies Ethan loved since he was little. He greeted me at the door, taller than I remembered, his teenage grin still soft around the edges. At the dinner table, conversation floated between school, work, and neighborhood gossip. Laura, as always, held the spotlight, describing her latest renovation plans for her house. Halfway through dessert, Ethan asked innocently, "Grandma, how old is this house anyway? Mom always says it's been in the family forever." The room stilled for a moment. I smiled, cutting into my cookie. "Oh yes, Ethan. Your grandfather and I bought this house in 1982. We signed the deed together." Laura's fork froze midair. Ethan's eyes widened. "So, technically, it was yours first." I looked at him gently, then glanced at Laura, whose face had drained of color. "Still is, sweetheart," I said softly. "My name is still right there on the papers." The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the hum of the fridge. Laura quickly forced a laugh, brushing crumbs from the table. "Oh, Mom's just being sentimental. Don't listen to her, Ethan." But her hand trembled as she reached for her glass. I leaned back, letting the words hang in the air. No shouting, no drama. Just truth, dropped like a stone into a pond. For the first time in years, I saw fear flicker in Laura's eyes. And I knew she had finally realized I wasn't as powerless as she believed. After dinner, when the dishes were stacked and Ethan had gone upstairs to finish homework, Laura cornered me in the kitchen. The overhead light flickered, throwing sharp shadows across her face. She set her wine glass down hard, the stem rattling against the counter. What was that little performance about, Mom? Telling Ethan the house is still yours. Are you trying to humiliate me in front of my own son? I folded the dish towel in my hands, my voice steady. I wasn't performing, Laura. I was answering his question with the truth. Her face flushed red. The truth. The truth is you've been using this house as leverage for years. You dangle your help over us like a chain, reminding us how much we owe you. You want control. Even now, I met her glare calmly. No, Laura, I wanted family. I wanted respect. Control was never my aim, but I won't be erased. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. You are 72 years old. You live alone in a shabby apartment. Without us, you have nothing. You should be grateful we even let you sit at this table. The words were meant to cut, and for a moment they did. But then, something inside me shifted, like steel locking into place. I set the towel down and looked her in the eye. Without you, Laura, I still have my name, my dignity, and yes, this house. Without me, what do you have? Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The mask of control she wore so proudly cracked. For the first time, she looked unsure. From the stairwell, a floorboard creaked. Ethan stood there silently, his wide eyes fixed on us. He had heard everything. Laura spun toward him, panic flashing in her eyes. Ethan, go to your room. But Ethan didn't move. His gaze flicked from his mother to me, confusion and hurt battling in his expression. The war Laura had kept hidden was no longer a secret. The breaking point had come and there was no turning back. 2 weeks later, I asked for a family meeting. Laura thought it was about my health, maybe even an apology. She looked smug when she arrived with Daniel. Ethan sat beside me at the old oak table, worry etched into his young face. But when Mr. Harris, my lawyer, walked in carrying a leather briefcase, Laura's smile faltered. Mother, what is this? Daniel asked cautiously. I folded my hands. This is clarity. Mr. Harris placed the deed on the table, sliding it across the polished wood. As of today, Mrs. Nora Whitfield remains the sole legal owner of this property. Furthermore, she has executed a new will and trust. Upon her passing, the house will transfer directly to her grandson, Ethan, bypassing all other claims. The room went silent. Laura's face drained of color. That's absurd. She exploded, slamming her fist against the table. You can't just hand my son property without my consent. Mr. Harris didn't flinch. Legally, she can, and she has. I turned to Laura, my voice calm but firm. You called me a burden. You tried to erase me from my own family, but I am not powerless. I will not be used. This house, this legacy, it belongs to those who respect it, not to those who scorn it. Daniel rubbed his temples, disbelief in his eyes. Laura, is this true? Did you really? She cut him off, her words frantic. She's manipulating all of you. This is control, don't you see? She's trying to turn Ethan against us. Ethan's voice, clear and trembling, broke the tension. No, Mom, she's protecting me. She's the only one who's ever protected me without asking for something back. The weight of his words crushed the room. Laura sank into her chair, shaking her head, but the fight in her eyes was gone. For the first time, she understood her power was broken. The house was quiet after that storm of words. Laura refused to meet anyone's eyes. Daniel sat frozen, torn between shame and shock. For once, I did not rush to comfort him. Some truths had to sting before they could heal. I stood, sliding the deed back into Mr. Harris's briefcase. This discussion is finished. I have protected what matters. From here on, I will no longer beg for a seat at this table. If I'm invited, it will be because I am wanted, not because I'm useful. Ethan rose with me, his young shoulders squared with determination. He took my hand as though it was the most natural thing in the world. Grandma, you'll always have a seat with me. Laura's eyes filled, but not with apology, only fear. She knew the power she'd tried to hold over me had vanished. Days later, I returned to my small apartment. For the first time in years, it didn't feel lonely. It felt free. I baked a fresh loaf of bread, wrote in my journal, and mailed the first letter of the trust to Ethan, a promise sealed in ink that my love for him would outlive any bitterness in this family. On Sunday morning, he came to visit. We sat together at the old library where I once worked, sunlight spilling over dusty shelves. He opened a book and read aloud, his voice steady and clear. I watched him, my heart swelling. This was my legacy, not the house, not the money, but the strength to stand tall in the face of cruelty. I leaned over, whispering, "Remember this, Ethan. Never let anyone decide your worth for you. You carry your own name. Guard it." He smiled, and in that smile I saw the future, one that no insult, no betrayal could ever erase. And for the first time in a long while, I felt whole.